Tonight on KBOI 2 News at 5.
I'd like to turn back in and land. Coming back in.
Go on, cancel takeoff clearance, full chart. Correction, cancel takeoff clearance.
A tragic day at the Boise airport as the CEO of a major Treasure Valley employer dies in a single-engine plane crash.
You're watching KBOI 2 News at 5. Watching out for you.
Steve Appleton, the chairman and chief executive officer of Micron, is dead at the age of 51. Thanks for coming home to KBOI 2 News at 5. I'm Mike Murad. The man who led Micron Technology for the past 18 years, Steve Appleton, lost his life today. Appleton died this morning in a plane crash at the Boise airport. Scott Logan is live at the airport to begin our breaking news coverage. Scott.
National Transportation Safety Board crews and emergency crews are on the scene here, getting ready to remove the wreckage of the aircraft in which Steve Appleton was flying this morning, remove the wreckage to a secure hangar to continue the investigation. Here's what we know so far. The crash happened around 9 o'clock this morning. Steve Appleton took off twice from the Boise airport in an easterly direction in his high-performance single-engine aircraft. The first time he took off, he landed immediately and returned to a nearby hangar. Appleton took off for a second time in his Piper Lance airplane, and that's when things went terribly wrong. The National Transportation Safety Board interviewed several witnesses at Gowan Field who saw the plane crash on the second takeoff. Versions vary, but everybody was consistent on one basic point. Here's what they told investigators.
The main consistency that they saw was the accident aircraft takeoff of runway 10 right. After reaching about 100 to 200 feet above ground level, the aircraft banked. It did a steep bank and stalled, is the quotes of what we got from the witnesses. Thereafter, it rolled into the ground, pretty much contacting the terrain inverted.
There was one final communication between Appleton and air traffic control, and that recording will be used in the crash investigation. Here's the NTSB again.
And the pilot requested that he return back to the airport, and that was the last call. So that is what we know now. Again, we'll be sending those tapes in and seeing what information we can get, albeit, RPMs that we can get in the background and different noises that I'm not able to segment and do an audio analysis here, but we'll be getting those later on.
Investigators believe the plane burst into flames when it hit the ground. That is to say, they do not believe that there was an on-board fire as the plane plummeted into the tarmac. They say the pilot was thrown out of the aircraft but was consumed in the flames that broke out. The fire was quickly put out by fire crews. The airport closed for only a brief time, reopening using just one runway. Conditions at the time of the crash, we're told the runway was dry, there were light winds, and not many birds in the air traffic pattern. Now, the preliminary investigation could take 5 days, but the final report could take up to a year to complete. They'll be using all sorts of things in this investigation, the witnesses, the audio recordings we talked about, obviously wreckage, from the crash itself, as well as video. There were video cameras, security cameras that recorded the crash, and that's going to play a part in helping to explain what went so terribly wrong here this morning. Live at the Boise airport, Scott Logan, KBOI 2 News, watching out for you.
Scott, thank you. And shortly after hearing the news of Appleton's death, Micron released a statement. It reads in part, "We are deeply saddened to announce that Steve Appleton, Micron chairman and CEO, passed away this morning. Our hearts go out to his wife, his children, and his family during this tragic time." Meanwhile, after hearing the news Appleton died, Micron halted trading on the NASDAQ. The stock price currently sits at $7.95 a share. Here's what Governor Butch Otter is saying on Steve Appleton's death. A statement from the governor reads in part, "Idaho has lost a true champion, a great friend, and a visionary businessman. He lived life to the fullest, and while he enjoyed great success in business and in life, he never lost his intensity or his drive." Idaho lawmakers in Washington, D.C. also released a joint statement today on the death of Steve Appleton. It reads in part, like the rest of Idaho, we are stunned and deeply saddened by the news of Appleton's sudden death. Steve Appleton was to Idaho what Steve Jobs was to America. Appleton owned several types of aircraft and flew frequently. Alana Brophy joins us live in the Satellite Center to continue our breaking news team coverage. Alana.
That's right, Mike. 51-year-old Steve Appleton was known as a professional stunt plane pilot and a former motocross racer. Steve Appleton, a California native who attended Boise State and played on the tennis team. After earning his bachelor's degree in business, Appleton started his career on the factory floor of Micron in 1983. He worked the night shift in production. In 1991, Appleton worked his way up, being named president and the chief operating officer of the company. In 1994, he became Micron's CEO. At age 34, Appleton was the third youngest CEO in the Fortune 500. He was known as an adventurer with hobbies including scuba diving, wakeboarding, and of course, aviation. As news of Friday's crash spread across the world, the company halted trading of its shares, while Micron and its 20,000 employees worldwide take a moment to mourn their leader. As mentioned, Appleton leaves behind a wife and children. Reporting live in the Satellite Center, Alana Brophy, KBOI 2 News, watching out for you.
Alana, thank you. Sadness swept through Boise quickly on the news of Appleton's death today. Eric Avanier has community reaction as we continue tonight's breaking news coverage. Eric.
Well, you mentioned the name Steve Appleton, and just about anyone and everyone knew who he was and what he did for the Treasure Valley. But during the time of the crash, no one near the airport knew Appleton was involved in a fatal accident. Right after the crash, many people saw smoke billowing up. We talked to a couple of people who were near the airport, and they say they saw the smoke as they were driving by. They didn't exactly know what happened, but they were sure it wasn't good news.
We've seen the smoke today, and I was wondering what it was, but by the time I seen it, it was just barely any there. It was like I was wondering what it was from.
Saw the smoke, but I did not see no explosion or anything like that. Just saw the smoke by the airport.
Again, many people we talked to were very shocked by this news and say Appleton's death is a major loss for the Treasure Valley. Live in the studio, Eric Avanier, KBOI 2 News, watching out for you.
Eric, thank you. News of Appleton's death spread quickly this afternoon on social media sites, as did reaction to his death. Tamara writes on our Facebook page, God bless his family, Boise and Micron. R.I.P. Steve. Leisha also writes, quote, Steve was always approachable. He was a true leader. He lived a full life for sure. We all will miss him. And from Twitter, where news first started to break on Appleton's death, Javier writes, quote, thank you, Steve Appleton, for everything you've done for Idaho. You will be missed. Right now, here's more on the plane Appleton was flying when he crashed this morning. The Lancer is built from a kit. They're designed to fly faster than most small planes. Now, this is what it looks like. Just 2 years ago, the FAA sent out a safety advisory about the planes to pilots. Regulators concluded they were prone to stalling if they were moving slowly near the ground. Steve Appleton was a corporate executive who didn't always fit the mold. He had a penchant for pushing the needle and breaking stereotypes. Tammy Tremblay is live at the Boise Airport, continuing our breaking news coverage. Tammy.
Mike, Steve Appleton has always been known as a thrill seeker. He got his pilot's license in the 80s and he never slowed down. Steve Appleton always had a love for adventure, especially on planes built for seat-of-the-pants flying.
Manufactured in Germany, and it is the latest, if you will, and greatest in terms of aerobatic performing airplanes.
That was Appleton talking about his 300L, the plane that crashed back in Boise in 2004 after stalling about 45 feet off the ground while performing stunt maneuvers. Appleton suffered some serious injuries, but the Micron CEO wouldn't give up his passion.
I remember when I was a young child, I always wanted to be a pilot. And having the opportunity to, attend and see different type of aircraft.
This is video of him flying with the gunfighters of Mountain Home Air Force Base.
No passing out and no sickness.
Appleton also seeked the adrenaline rush on the ground. He won the 20-car Baja Challenge in 2006 and had a black belt. The last plane Appleton would fly was experimental, taking risks. It's just the way the 51-year-old lived his life. Live at the Boise Airport, Tammy Tremblay, KBOI 2 News, watching out for you.
Tammy, thank you. Appleton's connection to Boise State is also well known. A former Bronco tennis player who graduated in 1982. He was also involved in developing the College of Engineering. The Micron Foundation that he established also gave several donations to Boise State, including for the Micron Business and Economics building currently being built. Today at the Appleton Tennis Center, Boise State coaches and friends remembered the former Bronco.
The times with him were really special because he was such a dynamic man, and such a man that gave a lot, did a lot. And so it was always exciting to be around him because he was such an incredible doer.
Appleton was also awarded an honorary doctorate in 2007 and the school's Silver Medallion Award for service to the university back in 2001. Stay with KBOI 2 News for continuing coverage of Steve Appleton's death. In between shows, you can get the very latest updates online through our website on KBOI2.com, on Facebook, and on Twitter. Be sure to follow the hashtag Steve Appleton.